Okay, we're here again today with Lori Ware, curator for the Kern County Museum. The map story that we worked on before sort of opened the floodgates for people who've kept pieces of Bakersfield history in their closets, hanging on their walls for many years. And this comes to us from John Pryor. This is his dad down here. This is a pen and ink drawing, an original drawing by a man named Arthur Buel, who was a fairly famous California newspaper cartoonist. I think he worked for the Sacramento Bee. And he was family friends with the Pryors and came down here quite often and made this about, these are all Bakersfield people, right? And I don't know the story of who these people are, but he did these drawings of these famous local people. And I want Lori to sort of talk about who these are and kind of how cool this is.
Well, and in looking at these images, it's probably dates to around the early to mid 30s, because you notice that there are quite a few of the folks associated with the Frontier Days Association, and that took place. Okay. Frontier Days was a citywide celebration, and a lot of guys would grow beards, and they'd all dress in pioneer costumes, and they had, rodeos and that sort of thing out at the fairgrounds.
We don't have that anymore.
Where the museum is now. And so I think he must have created this because a lot of these folks in through here are associated with the Frontier Days. So right here you've got Thomas Alverson Baker, and that's Colonel Thomas Baker's son.
Okay.
He was a sheriff at one time, or city marshal rather. This is Jose Lopez, who we have his house at the museum. That is one of our most recent acquisitions as far as a historic building. Which is interesting because it was out on Rosedale Highway. Right.
I actually got the newspaper sort of started covering it because I would drive by that house every day, and I would see this old lady. She would sit on the porch and she would wave, and I was always like, in this neat old gingerbread house. And it turns out she was a Rankin, or her daughters were with the Rankin
One of
family.
her daughters, married to the Rankins.
Right, who sort of started the process of getting it to the museum. So I feel a kind of kinship with this fellow that I never knew before.
And this one, it's obvious that this pen and ink drawing is done from a photograph of J.J. Lopez, which I believe this photograph actually was originally from the Bakersfield Californian.
Aha!
So there you go.
Me and J.J. were like this.
Yeah. This gentleman, Jim Wagey.
This one over here?
Yes. I can't remember exactly what he did, but something with the county or the city. He may have been with the police department at one time. Well,
clearly Arthur Buel was kind of tapping into their personalities. Somehow he must have known these guys or known something. Because this says, ND, I've got 2 spurs. And then down here, 6-gun Jim Wagey, regular fellow. So, and this one of JJ says, still ornery. So, yeah, he must have known something about them.
And one of the things that Arthur Buel is known for is kind of an enlarged face, so he can depict people's facial expressions and that sort of thing, which you can see here. The focus is definitely on people's heads or faces. This is Charlotte.
Yeah, the ladies.
Yeah, this is Charlotte Jameson, which is Colonel Baker's daughter. He died when she was just 2 weeks old.
Oh.
So, unfortunately, she never really knew her father and grew up with her stepfather when her mother remarried. But it's interesting to see her. Her husband was J.M. Jameson, John Jameson, and he worked for the county. And right outside of the Californian, they used to have a memorial fountain that was in his honor.
Oh. Now, is that what Jameson Center, the Children's Center, is named for, this family? Do you know?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, I believe so.
Jameson Center is where when the county has to step in and take children away from neglectful or abusive parents, they go to the Jameson Center, which would make sense. I think it's spelled that way.
It is, and I'm not sure if it's Charlotte, but it may be their daughter or something like that. I can't remember the first name of who the center is named after.
And what about Mrs. J.C. Payne? Belle of the gay 90s. Still a belle.
I'm not sure, but I'm wondering if she's with Payne Mortuary.
Oh, okay.
Which is now the Junior League has that building.
Oh,
that would be my guess. And then Howard Dixon, which is here, he was really instrumental in getting the fair started. He was a teacher at BHS.
Okay.
And he put on livestock shows and taught agriculture and that sort of thing.
Junior livestock, still a huge tradition in this community.
Exactly. And then, of course, you've got Lindsay Pryor.
That's John Pryor's dad.
Who was with the East Side Progressive Club. And it says failed with whiskers, so they're making a little bit of fun of him because he couldn't grow a beard for the festival. And then Roy Woolham's, of course, there is Lake Woolham's,
right? Okay.
Which is named after him, and he was a supervisor here in town and was one of the supervisors who banned John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. But then also several years later was on the board when they decided to rescind that banning. So that's kind of interesting to see him
Roaring
there.
Roy.
Then you've got Elmer McFadden. I'm not exactly sure who he was, but here it says Secretary of the Bakersfield Frontier Days Association. So that's why I think you've got quite a few of the Frontier Days Association folks. So it's got to be, you know, about 33, 34 right in there. And then Harry West was a farmer out in the Shafter area, and he collected hundreds of historic horse-drawn vehicles.
Oh, cool.
And we have 15 of his wagons at the museum that his wife Ethel donated in the mid-60s. But he was really big in growing cotton and all kinds of other, you know, things associated with agriculture in this area.
So on the cool level, is this pretty cool?
It's
okay.
really neat. No, it's really, really neat. I've never seen anything like this associated with the Frontier Days folks. And, you know, to have somebody who was an editorial cartoonist for the Sacramento Bee that would do something like this related to our own local history.
It's really interesting. Neat. You got really into it when you came down here.
Yeah.
And I love his little details. If you can see, like, this guy, Al Heitzman, chairman of the Frontier Dance, he calls him Sidewinder, and he has a little rattlesnake with a rattle that's rattling up in his hat. I don't know if you can see that. It's pretty cool. And I don't know who Mojave Maud is, but I'll be down for doings. And then you've got Bodfish Bill, who's not a sucker. He's got these. It would be great to know these little details and where he came up with, you know, all these different names.
Well, and the little mule is interesting because Arthur Buel is known for having a little mule or burro in all of his caricatures, and they were sort of like an alter ego either for himself or his editor at the Sacramento Bee, and they would ask questions of politicians that, you know, were sometimes a little touchy subject, and that's
but it was the mule.
It was the mule asking. Right.
That's great. So let me ask you this, Lori.
Okay.
Would this be something that might find its way into the museum someday?
We would love to have something like this. That's for sure. So.
All right. Well, when I talk to John, I'll be sure and pass on that message.
Okay, great.
All right. So there you have it. All of these people you never recognized before. Now you know how they come forward through history, and they're still with us today. That's it.